All right, welcome to the October wrap up. And I had a fantastic reading month. Everything was at least like 3.5 stars or above. I mean, so I had like two that were in my maybe like not as good as I wanted them to be range, but man, everything was so solid. And I read so many things. And I actually finished my goals for Tome Topple, which, like, how? I honestly didn't know if I'd be able to finish one of those books before the end of the month. If you saw my Friday reads, you know. And so I'll talk about briefly, the numbers of what I've read, and then per usual, I broke it down into 3 categories this month: spooky, independent women in fantasy, and rebellion fantasy. Since I mainly read spooky things and fantasy things, that's what happened this month. I'm not mad about it. And so I read 12 things. I believe I read 5 of them physically, 4 of them on audio, and the rest were a mix of audio and physical, usually at the same time, immersion reading style, which was necessary for some books and really fun for others. And yeah, let's get into it. Let's start with the spooky ones, because Halloween just happened. I'm filming this November 1st. I had a great spooky weekend, so let's get into it. We'll start with Flowers for the Sea. This is the first thing I actually read this month. This is a novella I got an e-arc for on NetGalley. I picked it up because I expected it to have similar vibes to things written by River Solomon, kind of that unsettling type of horror. And that definitely is here. It did deliver on that aspect, but my biggest issue is that for me it was largely unforgettable. I was fine reading it while I was reading it, but I didn't get blown away by the ending. The themes were things that I have been reading a lot this year recently, so it wasn't like there was anything new for me to pick apart and think about. It's basically about this woman who is pregnant on this ship, and for reasons, people live on ships now. It's very the world is kind of in an apocalyptic place, so you have to be on ships, and she is an outcast in several ways. One is she's one of the only women who can be pregnant. Normally this doesn't work out. And she is a descendant of people who are always have prejudice against them. And you're watching her bring this pregnancy to term, and there's a lot of unsettling horror aspects to that. And yeah, I don't know, it just didn't work well for me. I think part of it was how it was executed, and I think I would have preferred this story in a novel, and I'd be really interested to read other works by this author in novel form, because I really did like their writing style. I just didn't really, I don't know, it was one of those novellas where I needed more to make it memorable, if that makes sense. So that's the first one I read this month for the spooky section. I also read, I guess keeping with the theme of parenthood, The Changeling by Victor LaValle. I've been meaning to read this for over a year now, ever since Rachel from the Shades of Orange told me about it, and it was perfect for me. So my best type of spooky season read is the adult fairy tale, and that's what this is. This is an adult dark fairy tale, and it was fantastic. If you don't know what a changeling is, it's part of the folklore of one day your baby is exchanged for basically a fae person or a different monster, but it looks the same, but it's no longer your kid. So that is the fairy tale that this book is named after, and it's a new father, and you're watching things happen with his family and his kid and unpacking this mystery. I don't want to say much more than that, but it was great for me. It was perfect for the season, exactly what I wanted. For me, it was the same level of darkness as something like Pan's Labyrinth, which I also consider a dark fairy tale if you've ever seen that movie. I had a fantastic time. It was also written by an author who obviously I think loves New York City. It has those vibes too, because this takes place primarily in New York City, and I was getting a lot of the vibes that I got with The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, in terms of bringing that life and culture to the city and making the city a character within itself and its history, and how that plays into this fairy tale, and how that urbanizes a fairy tale. And because in most fairy tales we think of with forests and more nature and things like that. Oh, it was so good, and I loved the ending, and I love, especially with the ending, how it is a conclusion. It is a concrete conclusion. It is satisfying, but different people think of it different ways and have their own ways of interpreting it, and you'd think that means it's open-ended, but I don't think it's open-ended whatsoever. It's very much, here's the end of the story. But I've talked to multiple people, and we all took different things away from it, and I think that's just masterful. So I really loved that. I also read Vita Nostra. This was the patron vote for my TBR. I picked it up when I went to Vermont earlier this year. I think that's when I got it, because I got a really good used copy. I wanted to read it because of Brittany from Books with Brittany talking about it, finally pushed me over the edge. And I said in my weekly updates that maybe by my wrap-up I would know how to talk about this book. And really what I can say is this book knows what it is, and it does exactly what it wants to do perfectly. So what do I mean by that? It is a book that is purposefully confusing, but not in the sense of like Malazan Book of the Fallen or anything like that. Like, you are as confused or know as much as the main character the entire time, and you kind of get the sense that this is a book that will never completely answer your questions, and you should hold on to that because that's true. And you really follow this girl being coerced into a schooling situation, and what she's learning there is really hard to comprehend. But it also, like, as you read the book, like, the student herself has to read books that don't make sense. So it's very meta in that way, and suddenly the book starts to sort of make sense to you as the book she's reading makes sense to her, and the book really makes you go through similar emotional experiences as the main character, and it's really, it's like a psychological horror, I feel. Like, it was so unsettling to me, especially as a grad student. Like, this main character is an A student, needs to do her best, and it was a fascinating commentary on that aspect of education and things like that. Definitely dark academia. It reminded me of things like The Library at Mount Char and Middle Game in terms of its, like, fantasy world building and, like, what's happening. I don't really get it. We're, like, hand-waving a lot of things here, but I get the gist. Like, in my head, it's the story about how the kids in the Library of Mount Char were taught, if that makes sense, if you've read that book. So I'm really glad I read it. I don't know if I'll ever reread it. I feel like I got what I wanted from it, but it was a trip. Another one I read was Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This one I read primarily with audio, and I'm so glad I did. I think for multiple reasons, this is my favorite Silvia Moreno Garcia. One, I did the audio, so the characters were just awesome. The narrator was fantastic. Two, multiple point of view. This was my first multiple point of view Silvia Moreno Garcia. I had read Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I'd read Mexican Gothic, and although I think technically in Gods of Jade and Shadow there is a slight multi-point of view portion to it, it was primarily Cassiopeia. This has 3 to 4 point of views, and I loved Adel, I loved Domingo. I didn't really love the other ones, but they were important, and it was so cool. So this is a story set in Mexico City, kind of, I felt, near future. It gave me vibes of like Blade Runner or Underworld or something like that. Like, those are like the vibes I was getting, but with the color of Mexico City. And you have Domingo, who collects things from trash for his like being able to be alive, like he lives in the sewers, but he's like happy about it. Like, he's such a chill sweetheart of a guy. Love Domingo so much. You have Adel, who is a vampire. There are vampires in this book. That's also why I get Underworld vibes. Who ends up in Mexico City, where vampires are not allowed. Vampires are known to exist in this world. And Adel and Domingo run into each other. And it's very much that classic, like, story of normal human runs into a vampire and gets wrapped up in her business and her problems. And that needs to unfold. She's running from people who are trying to find her. And you even have the, like, trope of the cop trying to uncover what is happening in her city. So it, like, hit all of the campy vibes for me. If I had read it any other time of year, but like September or October, it might not have worked as well for me. Because this is the time of year where I love that type of formulaic genre type of spook. Like, it's very Buffy, right? And I love Buffy. So, I don't know. And now, I say that, and I said vampires. It's not the same type of vampires as Buffy, and it's not even the same, like, monster of the week type thing as Buffy. I'm just saying that, like, in terms of, like, leaning into some of those type of monster tropes was really fun. And the vampires themselves, really unique lore. Really cool. So I really enjoyed that. Like, my favorite Silvia Moreno Garcia so far. And I think the last two I have on my spooky list are both by Carmen Maria Machado, and I think I want to talk about them at the same time. I haven't really decided. First of all, I do have a whole discussion video with Reads with Rachel. She has it on her channel where we discuss all of the short stories, so I'm going to link that down below. I also do have a standalone review for this video from like a year and a half ago, because this was a reread for me, and I don't have any video on In the Dream House. I do kind of want to do a video on both of them because they are so like linked to me, because I read them back to back, which was fantastic. So Her Body and Other Parties was her debut. They are a collection of short stories that feel deeply personal, and they explore different aspects of being a woman with a body, mentally, physically, your relationship with yourself, with others, in platonic relationships, in romantic relationships. It explores those themes a lot, and it does it in very different narrative structures. I have heard reading the audiobook is not the way to go, because the audiobook doesn't tell you we're on a new story now. Apparently, the narrator doesn't say the name of the story before reading it in the audiobook, so they kind of blend together. And also, there's one story that, like, I cannot even imagine doing an audio experience of, and that's the SVU story, where it's just episode title, description, and you read like 70 pages of that, which not everyone loves. Actually, most people hate. I really like it because, again, kind of like Vita Nostra, I think it knows exactly what it is and is doing exactly what it intends to do. That doesn't mean it's enjoyable, right? But for me, I actually did have fun with it, and I picked up even more on this reread. Every story that I thought would be enhanced on reread was, and I loved discussing it with people. I got to also discuss it with Evie because she picked it up to read with me while I was preparing for this book club and ended up loving, which is always the best experience of loving a book and seeing one of your friends also fall in love with it. And then we both read in the Dream House for my local book club because we did it on Zoom this month just because there was a Boston Marathon. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it runs right by my bookstore and they closed early because of that, so we did a Zoom meeting. And oh my gosh, in the Dream House. It's hard to say you enjoy something that is so deeply personal to another person who created it, and it is so tragic. It's the story of an abusive relationship that Carmen Maria Machado went through. And she, again, writes this narratively very, like, I don't know if flash fiction is the right word. I think she called it fragmentation in the work. So it's Dream House as blank, and sometimes it's a genre type, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's whatever, like those are all the sections. And she also narrated the audiobook, so I was listening to this while physically reading and taking notes on whatever like stuck out to me or like starring certain chapters. And it's amazing. Like it's fantastic. I love basically every decision that she made in crafting that work. It's something that I'll read again. And I think another part of it is that I have already loved her work. And then I learned a lot about her that I could relate to. She's a white Latina who basically grew up mostly American, less of her Latin side. She loves Star Trek. She loves Doctor Who. These are all things I hyper identify with. There are some things we don't like overlap with. I've never dated women. I don't consider myself fat. Like there are some things we don't align with. But the things that like I was able to glean, I was like, oh man, this is a book I wish I had had when I was in my unhealthy relationship way back when. I didn't go through anything nearly like what this author went through, but it was fascinating and emotionally gripping, and I am so glad I have it on my shelf. I'm so glad I have both of them, and they are the right height, and they fit on the shelf so beautifully, and that in the Dream House also really informs the short story decisions that were made in Her Body and Other Parties, and like, it's fascinating. Like, for example, a small thing is in the SVU stories, there's this character that keeps buying too much produce to put in their fridge and then throwing it out. This is a recurring thing that happens in the SVU stories. And you're like, but why? And then I learned in the Dream House, this is a thing her ex did all the time. And then I'm like, that's fascinating. Seeing how, like, you needed a repetitive, cyclical thing for your SVU story, which is a very cyclical show, and you chose this thing from your life. Like, it was really cool reading those back to back. So if you ever have the like emotional energy to be able to do that, highly recommend. So those are the spooky books. Let's go into the independent women in fantasy books. This is just, I just want to talk about these awesome people. We'll start with Jade City, which has Shay. So this is a reread for me. Loved it. I'm currently rereading Jade War with audio. They're just so fun. I was really feeling like, I think a month ago, I was like, man, I miss this family. I miss this family drama. I need to be back in it. And I'm so glad I picked up Jade City. I was able to. The audiobook came in the nick of time. Oh, the pacing of Jade City is like perfection. I don't know. Like, I thought that the first time through. I finished it and I'm like, you know, at first there were some parts that lulled, but after finishing it, everything was perfect. And on reread, I didn't even think anything lulled. I was just like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. And part of that is knowing why you need to know things when they're told to you on a reread and everything like that. And I'm finding that's the same experience with Jade War, where at time when I was reading Jade War the first time through, I was like, things aren't moving at a pace I expected it to. not having that issue this time around. I'm trying to decide if I should describe what Jade City is more so than it's a mafia family drama in a made-up city. Basically 1980s-ish, 1990s-ish inspired city, so not really like cell phones or anything like that, no real high tech. And there is Jade. And I guess I'll talk about Jade, because Jade is so cool to me, because this is pretty low to mid magic fantasy. Like, Jade is important, but it's not like you're seeing people doing flashy things with the magic system all the time. Jade can make you stronger, faster, it can make you more durable, it can help you perceive people's feelings, it can help you heal them. Like, it can do all these things, and mostly it exists passively and you don't see the flashy side. Sometimes you do, and it's really cool when you do, but most of the time it's just kind of there and it's a status symbol, and it's important to be the right type of person who can handle it. And I love the discussion of substance abuse and Jade and over dependency, and like, I don't think I've ever seen a magic system used for this theme specifically so well. Like, I mean, there's definitely been magic systems that have had drawbacks, like if you use too much, you must pay a consequence or a penalty. But this one is just, I think it's so good. And I'm very picky about how people handle themes with drug addiction and abuse because of like my own personal family baggage, and it's really good in my opinion. Next up, you all saw it coming, Lady Trent, books 4 and 5. I finished the main 5 books. I still have the letters of Lady Trent, and I still have the companion novel, and I plan to read both of those before doing my whole series review. But I finished the main 5, and I'm desperately missing her. She's so cool. Well, what can I say about books 4 and 5 in a 5-book series? What I can say is I love Lady Trent. You cannot skip around. Do not do that. I didn't think I'd have to tell people that, but my coworker who picked these books up on my recommendation was about to skip book 3 to get to book 4 because the library didn't have book 3. And she's like, but they're just expeditions. I can just hop around. No. You cannot do that. Please don't. You will not like your time. Like, it's still in a chronological order. There are still cause and effect. But in general, the reason I love this series is really, like, the expeditions are fun. I like the formula. It's cozy. It's Lady Trent. I love her. I love how she gets herself in trouble, how she has to get herself out of trouble. I love her sassy voice. I love the relationships she forms. I love her lens in looking at the world around her. The world around her is cool, and I don't mind seeing it. It's particularly her lens that I love. And I do foresee me in like a couple years being like, I miss Lady Trent. I need to listen to her. And it may or may not be because of Lady Trent that I rewatched Bones. I don't know. I do have a thing for like female scientist main characters apparently, even though I don't like to have heavy science in my books. I just like, I don't know. I don't even think I relate to her. I think there's nothing between me and Lady Trent that are the same. I just think she's so cool. And luckily, without me knowing it, I finish book 5 of Lady Trent, and I'm just like, oh, it's over. What do? Well, I had to pick up the 9th Reign for our Discord buddy read, which has been super fun. And lo and behold, I meet Vintage. Okay. I'm not going to talk a lot about what the 9th Reign's about, because it's really hard to describe. It is a fantasy world that's not doing too hot. The Earth is definitely not at its best. I don't know if it's technically Earth, but the planet on which these beings live, it's not doing too great. There's impending doom on the horizon. There are a lot of unique races and culture and consequences to magic. It's got all those cool things. What I will tell you are the characters that I loved. We got Vintage. She is an independent scientist girl who is rich. She owns a wine, what are they called? Wineries? I don't know, a vineyard. I am not good at knowing what the words should be, but her family's rich, and the minute she could, she's like, I want to know why the world's the way it is. It's not what it should be, and we should, ask the questions and find the answers. And she just leaves. And when she leaves, she meets this dude who is, one of the last of his kind, who's, running away from the downfall of his race. He's kind of like an elf-vampire mix. And she's like, hey, I will pay you in money and wine if you are my sword for me. And he's like, fine. So they are just this platonic team that travels around to try to solve the mysteries that are like the dark underbelly of their world. It has some really creepy imagery. And they also stumble upon this witch. She's like a a witch fallen or a fallen witch. I can't remember the term, but she can just like make stuff go on fire. She's not very good at it, or she kind of is good at it, but the control is eh. And they just are like, you join us. And there's contention, and it's not perfect, but there's just this team, and they're traveling around, and I love them. I love them so much. And I love the mystery of the world. And this is very much a first book in a series book. Some first books can stand on their own. Some first books complete an arc and, you're like, I want the next book, but I can wait. This one, I would say it completes an arc, for sure. But it's like how Ship of Magic made me want to read Mad Ship. Like, it's a first book that's like, okay, everyone's in position. Now you want to see what they do, if that makes sense, The first book is very much, I'm learning the world, I'm meeting these characters, I'm having a fun time, but now I need to know what's happening next, so picking up Bitter Twins very soon. The next two are in Rebellion Fantasy, and I actually unfortunately think these are my two lowest rated books of the month, and I didn't plan it that way. They just also both have Rebellion Fantasy portions, but I do like Rebellion Fantasy, so I don't think that's not the reason. We'll first talk about City of Lies, which was the Patreon buddy read, so I did a spoiler vlog for this for them. This is a book that I'm really bummed about because I was really hoping I'd like it a lot, and I didn't hate it, but I think it's just fine. I think is really what I can say. Like, a lot of it's left my mind, which is a bummer for a book that took me, like, a long time to read, like at least 12 hours to read. So City of Lies is about this area of the world that is normally peaceful. It's not very war-driven. It's normally very political and, money-based and everything like that. And our main characters are this brother-sister duo who live in this family who are basically the second strongest family. There's a chancellor and a chancellor's heir, and then they are the Proofer family. They are the ones who are supposed to protect the chancellor family, which is hereditary. It's not voted for. And we start the book with tragic deaths and betrayal and this big mystery being revealed. And then at the same time, things escalate and it becomes a siege story. So you have a big mystery and a siege, and everything's like, for these characters. It's actually a very fast-paced, gripping story in a lot of ways because of these high, tense situations. But I did not connect to Joven and Catalina like I really wanted to, which sucks because they are also really interesting characters. So I'm going to tell you about them because there's a good chance you would connect with them and I wouldn't, because I think this is a very subjective part of writing. Like, if you and I usually have similar tastes in characters, you probably know it wouldn't work for you. But if you sometimes like characters that I don't, things like that. So Joven, sometimes he has anxiety problems and he needs to cope with it. And he'll do it by counting certain things, pacing certain ways. He has certain ways of coping with his anxiety. And he also is someone who very much needs things to be done in a particular way. So kind of some representation for neurodivergency and anxiety representation. And his sister, Catalina, is immunocompromised. So she was supposed to be the proofer, but could not be because she would get too sick from testing poisons and things like that. And it provides chronic fatigue and pain. And she's constantly pushing through this in the story and also trying to be like, this doesn't mean I can't do X, Y, Z, though. It just means I have to pace myself or work harder and things like that. So they both have really great representation that I love seeing in fantasy books. But for some reason, even though it was first person, I think the book was lacking maybe character interaction or maybe the amount of inner monologue I needed to really sympathize or feel for them, which is weird because I did actually like the two characters that didn't get point of views that ended up being kind of main characters, like the Chancellor. Loved him. He was so cool, but we never got his point of view. I just got to see people see him, sort of thing. And also, it's a very low magic book, so maybe that also didn't help me, and where like there is a magical presence, but it's mostly a military siege story with political intrigue. But I honestly thought those were the things I liked the most about the story. So I feel like my rating is more so on the fact that I just was not connecting to these characters, and I think these characters are the same in the sequel. And this book is for sure like a first book in a series that stands on its own. So I don't require the sequel. And so I'm not probably going to pick it up, which is a bummer. But it is what it is. I'm not upset that I read it, but I would say that if I didn't do like a spoiler vlog buddy read, I probably would have DNF'd it. Not because it was bad, but because I knew about halfway through that it would be like a 3-star read. And that's what it ended up being. So it's not like it changed and turned it around at the end for me or anything like that. And in the last one, I finished it. And I'm really proud that I finished it, and I'm still thinking about it because I finished it yesterday, and that's House of Chains. The 4th book and Malazan Book of the Fallen. And although this book was, for me, probably my least favorite in the series so far, like I think I've given every other book 4 stars, and I think this one's just a 3.5 for me. And I mean, that's still a good book. Obviously, that's not bad. I still was almost like being like, man, but when can I read book 5? Even though I know book 5 is a completely different set of characters and a different time and place and everything like that. But there's something about these books that keep me wanting to learn things, even though the learning is painful and sometimes exhausting. And I think in this one, we were just missing the amount of character interactions that I needed to balance the what is going on-ness of a Malazan book. Like, my favorite moments were still the moments he chose to give me the small interactions between the Marines and everything like that. But most of it was, I don't know, it's all going to make so much more sense in hindsight or on a reread. Like, this is a book that will improve, probably become a 4.5 star on a reread. But on a first read, the execution is really, it's not on par with what I have liked in the previous Malazan books. And I don't think it's that good, if only because, and I looked this up, it's called House of Chains. House of Chains is referring to a magic part of the world, but also it's a symbol and metaphor for chains and what are chains, and we talk about that a lot. But not only do we talk about that a lot, the word chain is used over 200 times in this book, maybe 300, and it's always used in the same sense of, look at the theme. And like, okay, if you're going to spend that much time repeating the theme to me, please tell me what the Talana Mas are doing. Like, or tell me about the Tiste, which I think I'm going to learn more about in the next book, but I'm just like, I'm so confused about so many things that you don't repeat. Maybe balance it just a little bit. And then it changed from being chains to the word convergence, which was only used 20 times, but that was in the last fourth of the book. So I think there were things that I was getting exhausted, and I was confused, and I was missing character connections, that I didn't get the payoff that normally happens for me at the end of a Malazan book. Like, it was still epic, and there were still really cool things that happened, and like things that were revealed came together. But I think I was teased because like the first part of this book was actually really solid for me. Like, at first I was like, what's happening? This is really weird to be with one perspective for so long. But then I grew so attached, and then we went kind of back to more like Gardens of the Moon or Memories of Ice, where it's just like every chapter is like 8 to 10 point of views and good luck. And I like more the Dead House Gates or the beginning of this book perspective, where it's like, okay, we're going to focus in on like 5 people. Okay, that's what we're going to do this book, and maybe we'll bring in a few others through third-party point of views, but we're going to focus on like these 5 people, and instead it's like 20 people. So I don't know, I have a lot of qualms with this one, but at the same time, I'm still very eager to go to the next one. I'm like, I don't know, it's definitely a journey I'm not done with, and I'm not upset with. This was just for sure, for me, the least enjoyable, but I also see how it could become like another level on a reread when I get to that in like, 5 to 10 years or something like that. It's just one of those things. So I have to finish that spoiler vlog. I haven't filmed my last clip for that because I kind of want to let things settle. And also I just saw that there's going to be a spoiler chat on a channel I follow in a couple days for this book, House of Chains. So I might watch that and just like, I don't know, get rid of the like fatigue enjoyment part of my rating and let myself like have more of the analytical side come forward and think about it. Because, a book rating or review over time is a combination of enjoyment but also skill and stuff. And I do weight heavier on enjoyment when I give ratings because that's why I read. But I also recognize that for myself in reading Malazan, it's also like the work I have chosen to do. Like, it's definitely for me, like, I wish there was a grad school course or an undergrad course on this series, because that's how I want to do it, is do the work portion. It's not the same vein as a pleasure read, but it uses my pleasure read time, and I think that's where I'm like at an impasse sometimes with that book series. So this has been very long, but those are all the books that I've read. What were some of your favorites that you read in the last month? Leave me a pumpkin emoji because it was October. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.